I am the woman who cheated on my husband. This is my confession. I was unfaithful to my husband 15 years ago. The affair was ended and he forgave me. Since then, he has had constant feelings of being second place in my heart. Several times a year he will experience a major trigger that lasts several days. This last weekend was a very significant event because I came completely clean about my actions during the affair. It took me so long because I was afraid that if he knew all the details, he would have a harder time healing. I was wrong and should have divulged everything immediately. We had a very emotional talk and expressed our tearful intentions of repairing our relationship. He is apprehensive because over the past 15 years we have had many discussions and he has always felt that I have not done all I could do to make it up to him and make him feel like he is number one. Things always improve right after our discussions and then go back to the way they were, thus causing another trigger. This morning he experienced another trigger and left for work very angry. I am so scared that I have permanently ruined my marriage. I love my husband so much and do not want him to experience any more pain. Please give some advice as what I can do right now to help him feel the love that I have for him and the desire I have to make him feel like he is the only man for me and the only one I want. Comments. You had an affair, you rug swept it. You thought wrong about holding back the truth. You basically robbed him of another 15 years with you being less than honest. 15 years later, you dropped a bomb on your husband. And now any trust he's built up over the last 15 years is gone. You just want him to say awesome, because it's 15 years later. It doesn't hurt now. Not only does he have to deal with whatever you told him, he has to deal with the fact that you've been holding it for 15 years. And 15 years ago he might have told you to take a hike had he known the truth. That was a selfish move, so the unselfish move now is to not worry about what you want and what you need. Worry about letting him figure out what he wants and he needs. Now that you've once again turned his world upside down, he'll probably never feel like the only man for you if he can never trust you. And if you continue to trickle truth him, spreading it over decades, he's going to have difficulty believing anything you say. Take the person above's advice. Get him to IC or MC soon, please. God, been almost 2 years for me. I hope I am not suffering after 15, but I know there will still be some of that pain. Every time new information comes out one day after D-Day or 15 years later, it is a new wound. Much of the work you have done to help him heal these last years was torn down again by this new stuff. Hopefully it can rebuild quickly, but yeah, IC or MC may be good. I was in IC a few years before D-Day, just haven't gone back, need to. MC not covered by insurance and too expensive, so we try on our own. Maybe try to get away for a weekend. I always feel better when it's just the two of us, helps regain focus, and there is no better way to make me feel important than to keep me naked in bed for a few days and prove it. Write him a timeline and diary of the affair. Write an agreement for him, that if you cheat again, he will not pay alimony. Discuss the property settlement and any child custody issues. Hopefully you used protection. If not, get tested for STD. Have any children tested to show him that he is the father. When you cheated 15 years ago and deceived him for 15 years, you used energy to cheat, your brain to lie and deceive. Did you tell him about the other man? Have you gone to NC with the other man? Have you told the other man to never ever contact you? Make sure you do not defend the other man, especially after all this time. Did you do anything with the other man that you would not do with your H? He will trigger if you try to fix that now. So, do something for him that you did not do with the other man, and use your brain. Show him that he was never number two to the other man. How can you do that? You know him better than I do. What is he like? What have you told him about the other man and why you cheated? Do something to show him that he always was your number one and that the POSOM was never number one. How can you do that? Do not cheat on your H. Too late. But with your brain, you can think of something. If he cheated on you, what would you want him to do for you to show you that you were always number one in his life? Let us know what you do to show him he is your number one. And no secrets anymore in your marriage. OP responds, I have had no contact with the OM since the cheating event. I told my husband 2 days later about it but did leave some details out. During this latest trigger over the weekend, I did some research on helping a spouse heal from infidelity. And the advice was to be totally transparent. I truly thought I was sparing his feelings by not giving all details. I understand that by coming clean so late I have destroyed whatever faith he had in me. It is like I did it all over again. By looking at it that way, it's like I'm asking for a third chance. I'm not sure he's willing to do that. My husband's triggers can come from seeing something on TV but almost always come from the feeling that I am not doing everything in my power sexually, emotionally, and physically to make it up to him. During these 15 years we have moved out of state, bought a house and had 6 children. He loves me and I love him, but I fear that I have not done enough. I want him to be happy and for he and I and our family to stay together. There was nothing I did with the OM sexually that I have not done with my spouse. My husband feels that I planned and made time for the OM and he does not get that same treatment. That is a major issue. He feels that over the course of 15 years since the event, I have continually failed to make him feel special and without a doubt my man. I thought that by being a supportive wife, mother, housekeeper, etc. that would be what he wanted. I have continually failed to be the aggressor that he so desperately needs. He has come to me with unconventional sexual requests that I have not always embraced. We have done those things, but he feels that he always has to ask for them. I have not been the initiating party almost all of the time. It's not a disinterest in sex with him. I had a hard time not associating these new sexual experiences with the deviant behavior I exhibited by having an affair in the first place. Update. I was out of town with my H for the day but have returned and read all of the posts up until this morning. I told my husband about this thread and have shared it with him. I'm not sure if he is interested in posting himself, but he has read all posts and we have discussed some of them. We were married when I was 18 and he was 19. We were high school sweethearts, went to prom together. He even proposed at one of my school dances. I attended the university and he went to work full-time. About 2 years into our marriage, I began working as a receptionist for a construction company and cut back on my school attendance. It was there that I met the OM. One of my duties was to get instructions or messages to the foreman on the jobs by pager and phone. I had verbal contact with him because of these duties. When the workers came back to the office at the end of the day, I would see him. He was much older than me. One day during an information message on the phone, our conversation took a different tone. He commented that he thought women would make good form setters. This comment wasn't that significant in what his opinion was. It was a turning point from just talking business to having more personal verbal contact. In early deck there was a party where I introduced my H to my coworkers, including the OM. My H does not remember what he looked like, but he does remember being introduced. Through deck I continued to perform my work duties, and whenever I had to contact the OM there would usually be some friendly, flirty conversation. At home I began to feel like I wasn't getting enough attention from my H. He liked to hunt and would spend some free time preparing for that. In my mind I selfishly thought he was spending too much time on that and not enough on me. I began to resent his interest in hunting. I did not communicate this with him at all. Instead, I withdrew from him and we would argue and have tension between us. In Jan I received a note under my desk calendar from the OM. I know now that it was a feeler note to see if he might have a chance with me. The note said he hoped I was having a good day. Why did I write back? I expressed the same sentiment back. I later received another note telling me how pretty I was and that he had noticed me. I wrote back the same thing. The next note was an invitation to meet him after work at the post office. I went and we kissed in his car. When I got home there was a note from my husband to meet him at a hotel. I went and we spent the night there together. While he was planning and carrying out a romantic night together, I was kissing someone else. A few days later there was another note again inviting me to the post office. I went and we kissed in his car. On the way home the truck I was driving lost power and I parked it on the side of the freeway. The OM had been driving behind me and he stopped to pick me up and take me home. My H saw his vehicle when he dropped me off. That sat my husband went hunting. The OM called me for the first time outside of work and we met at a freeway rest parking area. I got in his car and we drove out in the wild. He had sex in his car. When it was over, I was shaking and upset and he took me back to my car. He said he would call me later. I said goodbye and tried to calm down. I cried and panicked on my drive home. I took a shower, threw away my underwear and took the dog for a walk. My H was there when I got home. We went to a movie that night and I rejected him when he tried to initiate sex. My H knew something was up. He had suspected of a while. He confronted me on Monday and asked if there was someone else. I wanted to tell him before but was too cowardly. I told him then that there was someone else. He punched our bedroom mirror and had to be taken to the hospital by ambulance for treatment. A few days later the OM called and my husband talked to him. There was never any contact with him again. My husband and I rug swept this affair and a few months later became pregnant with our first child. We had 5 more since then. It has been in the last few years that my husband has been interested in knowing the details. I said I didn't remember them, which was untrue. I remember most of what happened. I am not always great on remembering details, especially under pressure. But this could have been avoided by being transparent in the beginning. I lied to him to try to protect him, not realizing that what he was imagining was potentially worse than what had really happened. The details I left out were that I did not use a condom when I said that I had. Also, the details about the notes, kissing sessions, and flirting at work. I know that my affair was my choice. It was not my husband's fault and he was not neglectful of me. Even if he had been, he did not deserve at all what happened. I was incredibly selfish and thought only of myself. I didn't mean to hurt him, but I didn't consider his feelings either. I have continued to be selfish over the last 15 years by withholding information. My H has had enough. When I first posted I was terrified that our marriage was over. When he got home that night, he tore up everything, wedding photos, gifts, took all jewelry, and tore up the wedding dress. Although his hands did the physical damage, my actions had destroyed those items long ago. I cleaned up the mess and felt relief that these items that had been such a painful reminder to my H were now gone. We don't want to get a divorce, but things cannot continue the way they have been. We have decided to treat this marriage as a new relationship. I have to woo my husband. I have to win him back. I am committed to him and to being the wife he deserves. For too long I have neglected him and let him wallow in self-doubt and depression. No more. He is my one and only, and I love him so much. My husband has read all the posts on this thread. I think it has helped somewhat, but it has also brought to light some issues. There have been many questions that I have glossed over and not answered. Some of these were whether or not I thought the OM was more attractive, or was I more attracted to him? And did I consider leaving my husband? The OM was not more attractive. I was not more physically attracted to him. And I did not consider leaving my husband. I still don't have a definitive answer as to why I did what I did, but I know that I liked the attention and felt like I could do whatever I wanted. It was a purely selfish act and was not a result of what my husband did or did not do. He is not at fault at all for what I did. Any issue or grievance I may have had prior should have been addressed and communicated. It wasn't communicated. I had mentioned his love of hunting. It is not a reason for my choice. It's easy to blame the BS when trying to explain reasons for action, but the truth is, I am solely responsible for the choices I made. Also, I neglected to mention that the reason I joined this forum was because it was his suggestion. I have not made communication a priority in our marriage, and especially in regard to this issue, and have not taken the initiative to seek out resources that could be helpful to understand what happened or how I could help him heal. The things I have done have not come from my own mind. That is so painful for him, because it is as if the affair has continued with me not actively seeking for ways to make him feel special. He feels unspecial not in spite of some things I have done, like try to be a good wife, but rather by what I have not done, like be his lover. I had posted earlier that I didn't do anything with the OM that I didn't do with my husband. That is true on a physical level, but untrue in relation to how I make my husband feel. By going with the OM, I made him feel wanted. This made my husband feel unwanted, and by not pursuing him and coming up with my own ways to try to win him back and fight for him, I have continued to make him feel unwanted. It is as if the OM got my best and my H has had to settle with what's left. It kills me that he feels this way and that I have not seen that, or rather have not realized the gravity of his feelings and the damage that my inactivity has caused. When I told my H about the affair, it was because he asked. I wanted to tell him before, but again, did not act on my own to make the truth known. I relied on him to do the heavy lifting and have continued to do that throughout our marriage. Instead of taking charge of the healing that so desperately needed and needs to happen, I have let him take the reins. This makes him feel that I don't care about him. Now that I feel I have a better understanding of his feelings and how my inactivity has affected him, I can no longer allow it to continue. I have been wrong and selfish. I want to be with my husband, not because we should be together because of responsibilities or obligations, but because I want to be with him. I want to give him better than what I gave someone else. If the tables were turned, I would not have divorced my husband. I would have been deeply hurt and very insecure about his feelings for me. I would have wanted him to make time for me and make me feel special. I would want communication during the day to know he was thinking of me. I would want him to make me forget through his overwhelming gestures of love and kindness. I need to show him genuine acts of love and selflessness. I have hunted with him and would like to go again. I want to impress him with loving gestures before he asks for them. I understand that I have violated the intimacy in our marriage. It was never my intention to protect any privacy with OM or to protect him. Even though that wasn't the intention, the appearance of that being the intention is damaging to my husband. The most important thing to me is my husband and his happiness. I have never experienced anything with anyone that comes close to rivaling the specialness and closeness of the experiences I have had with my husband. My husband has forgiven me and I have forgiven myself for my terrible actions. There is no reason to not fully embrace sex with my husband and enjoy every second of it. He deserves a wife who is interested in every way in him and shows it through intimate sexual and non-sexual acts. I want to be that wife. Comments. I'm glad to see your response. To be clear, my post was not about your entire set of issues giving rise to your A, but only about why your husband is feeling second best. We agree that it may have seemed that you were protecting something with the OM and you have denied that was your intention. Good for you. Perception is reality for a while as far as BSs are concerned, and then reality is reality. Keep being open and honest, and hopefully your H will make that transition soon. I think a serious question is whether you actually gave your AP your best. Perhaps you did, and that may be an issue for you to address in MC. On the other hand, you may not have given AP your best at all. Either way, it might help your husband to know that whatever it was that you had with the AP, it never compared to what you have with him. That still leaves open the question, why did you do it? But that question is always asked, never has an easy answer. And truthfully, there is never really a right answer to that question. It is not as if any BS would ever say, well then, I agree with your choice to cheat. there is an honest answer, and that is what is needed. I believe you are giving honest answers to your work on making sure your answers are thorough, complete, and accurate to help keep him from drawing incorrect conclusions. In either event, if you are committed to being the type of wife that you just described, then that is something worth both of you fighting for. And contrary to my usual feelings of antipathy towards a WS, I really wish you success in rebuilding your relationship. Story 2. I have been married for 15 years, and from my knowledge, my husband has always been faithful to me until now. For the last 6 months or so, I have been super stressed out from all kinds of issues, mainly personal with kids and losing my mother. My husband and I have been sleeping apart during this time as well, but we still have maintained an okay sex life. He just chose to sleep on the couch and says it was because he didn't want to disturb me watching TV late at night. Although this bothered me, I just went along with it. He seemed to be upset most of the time, so we didn't really communicate much without arguing. So things weren't really good for these months. But I didn't know how bad they really were. So, a few weeks ago, I awake at 2 a.m. hearing my husband in the living room on the phone with someone. It wasn't so much of a big deal since he had just got home from work, but what was strange was the fact that I had been seeing him on the phone more and more lately, when he rarely ever talked to anyone other than his family on the phone our entire marriage. So, during this phone conversation at 2 a.m., I hear him end it by saying, "I will text you when I get up," which really disturbed me. I was positive he couldn't have been up talking to a male that late, and then telling him he'd text him when he got up. So I knew it had to be a woman. I was really hurt but didn't want to jump to conclusions. So, then a few days later, I leave, and soon as I get back, I hear him outside in the backyard on the phone again. This time ending the conversation by saying he needed to smoke a cigarette to get his mind right. Since the conversations didn't really sound like cheating, I had an uncomfortable feeling it still was, so I debated how to approach him with it, especially since he seemed so upset with me lately and unapproachable. I then spent the next few days really upset because I just felt like he was cheating on me, and this is why he didn't sleep in our room anymore. And I have been a fool thinking we could work past this. Eventually, I got really upset and just asked him who he was talking to over the phone via a text message. And since he didn't reply, I had to just ask him face to face, which I dreaded. He got super pissed and said he was talking to this person about a job, but I'm like at 2 a.m. So, he goes on to say, well, that's because he gets off late. So, I didn't like how he blew up at me for asking, and acted like he didn't care. So I told him I would just file for a divorce and leave him alone, since I can't ask my husband of 15 years who he is on the phone with. Also, he threw in my face that me knowing who he was talking to was just my way of controlling everything. So, since it seemed like our marriage was over, and I felt helpless and like I couldn't even talk to him about something that's bothering me and making me uncomfortable, the next day I went and got the papers for a divorce. I completed and filed the papers the following day. On this day, I debated if I would serve the papers to him because I really started having second thoughts. Later that day, I used the only car we have to pick my younger kids up from school immediately after him returning from picking up our older children from school. He accidentally left his cell phone on the seat, so I hurried up and left because I really wanted to look through his phone to see who he was calling, which I have never ever done before. To my surprise, I found he was texting some woman, getting pics from her, and calling this same woman, who was saved in his phone as S. I was so hurt. I read texts from her saying she loved him and him asking her to send him sexy pics, etc. I also saw a text that appeared to have made reference to them being together a few days prior when he all of a sudden went to spend the night with his mom. Since she lives a few hours away, I didn't think much of that all of a sudden visit until I later found a receipt from a restaurant, dine-in for two, paid for with his credit card, which I never mentioned, but also helped my suspicion out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but since I was parked only around the corner from our house to pick up our kids, I knew he would walk around there as quick as he could when he realized he left his phone. So I had to read quick. I wanted to get her phone number, but only had just enough time to read all the messages, which at least went back to before this past Christmas, which he also spent with his mother and not our family, surprisingly. As soon as I could finish reading the texts, I saw him walking to the car, which I knew why, because he didn't want me to see his messages. So I quickly pretended to read a book while waiting on the kids, and he knocked on the window and asked did he leave his phone. I gave it to him and he walked back home. I was so pissed but had to keep it together in front of the kids. As soon as I got home, I got the papers and served him myself and left for a few hours to calm my nerves. He then texted me saying how he thought I wouldn't go through his stuff and how he didn't think I would file papers so fast. I was even more pissed because I didn't mention anything about his phone and what I saw. Only served him divorce papers which he knew I said I'd file from 2 nights prior when asking who he was speaking to on the phone. So, I texted him back and told him how hurt I was for him cheating and asked him if he wasn't. Why was he mentioning me going through his stuff? He replied saying he never cheated and he wouldn't sign the papers if they say cheating. So I replied and told him papers just say irreconcilable differences, not cheating. Although I know he had. He replied back saying he never cheated, so I replied back saying he lied. He did cheat, and that I am not going to play back and forth games. I went through the phone and say the messages, pics, etc. So, he then replied back and said he only started back talking to her because he couldn't talk to me, and after all these years, he couldn't make me happy, so he felt our marriage was over. I couldn't believe what I was reading, especially since I felt like I couldn't talk to him all this time, and that he was distancing himself from me. We responded back and forth, and I told him how hurt I was. Later the next day, he came home and we actually talked and agreed we would forgive each other and work on our marriage so we can stay together. I was so emotional, hurt, and not thinking straight, so I only really asked him would he promise to never talk to her again, which he said yes to and apologized to me. It's only been about 6 days since all this occurred, and things have been super good between us. He sleeps in our bed again, and we have really reconnected like old times. It feels really nice because I really love my husband and didn't want a divorce. Even after finding out he cheated, I used to always say I would leave a man if he cheated, but in reality, I just couldn't leave my husband, especially after he wanted to work our marriage out as much as I did. However, although these last few days have been great, I am now starting to feel like he may be still talking to this woman. And also, I feel like I let him off way too easy due to me being so emotional, hurt, and desperate to save my marriage. What I mean is, I have a list of questions I really want answered because I feel like although I forgave him, I don't even know the extent of their relationship, how long it occurred, what actually happened between them, and who she even is. Because it sounds like she is an ex. I feel like it is unfair for me to have all these questions that I am afraid to ask him about in fear of him getting upset and our marriage ending, but at the same time, it's unfair to have to live with something and pretend like it's okay, and then have the issue resurface and cause problems later on in our marriage. Either way, I want to talk to him about her and get my questions answered, honestly, hopefully, and without him blowing up at me. I kind of feel like now is the best time before too much time passes, so he doesn't feel like why I'm bringing up something that happened so long ago that I forgave him for. I am so afraid to talk to him about this. Please help me with advice. Do I pretend nothing is bothering me and secretly be torn up inside not knowing if he had sex with this woman, how long they were even together, and just the extent of their relationship, and if he is still involved with her or not, or say something with the risk of a final blowout and lose my 15-year marriage with a man I love but lost trust for? I believe our marriage can survive from his infidelity, but I just have to know the truth about the other woman, and I don't feel like I can genuinely move on in our marriage without knowing. Even though things seem to be going well right now, I am so lost and don't know what to do. Please help with any advice, comments. In your fear about losing your marriage, you are willing to sweep the affair under the rug. This is bad and will only allow him to continue his affair while married to you. You will be in pain and he will have his cake and eat it, too. As Romain says, there have to be consequences to his betrayal. The ultimate consequence is divorce, which you have threatened and then walked back. You have to mean it in order for him to believe the threat and act on it. Right now, you don't know much of anything about the affair. You haven't demanded transparency from him. You have no way of checking to see if the affair is over. Really, you have done very little to kill the affair. He needs to become an open book to you to prove that the affair is done. He needs to open his phone, accounts, etc. to you so that you can both learn the truth and check on him. You have to find out if the other woman has a boyfriend or is married and expose her. You have to expose the affair to family and friends to shine a light on it and keep him accountable. And you do your own homework by checking on your own. Buy a VOR and find out if he is still in contact with her. He has to willingly answer your questions and agree to counseling. In short, there is a lot to do if you want a chance here. OP responds, I am really confused right now, but I do want to save my marriage. We have 3 kids together, and he has been the only father in my oldest 2 children's life since they were babies. I don't want to hold on to a marriage just for my kids, and I don't feel I am. However, I feel like I need to know more info on this affair before I can truly forgive and move on. I feel like I jumped the gun due to being overwhelmed with hurt and emotions, and I didn't handle this properly, which has left me stuck with unanswered questions. I want to talk to him tonight, but I am super nervous. A part of me just wants to leave it alone and try to move on, but I am really torn inside with not knowing the extent of this relationship, and if it is even over completely or not. I don't feel like I should be this terrified to speak to a man I have been with so long. I don't know, maybe I just want his love, and I am selling myself short. With that being said, he has been a good husband to me thus far. So it's not like I am throwing away a marriage that hasn't been good, because it has for the most part. But I don't know how to live with this now. It's too hard, and I want to make the right decision for the both of us. It doesn't serve any purpose to be in a relationship with someone where you have to hide your feelings in fear of starting an argument. Just so sad and don't know what to do. Do you all think it's possible to have the talk just to hear what he has to say about it, but still go into detective mode from there to make sure he is no longer keeping up the relationship? I do want to wait, mainly because I am simply terrified to have the talk, period. But this is driving me totally insane, and I almost just have to know more about their relationship. I don't want to jeopardize finding out if it's ended though, but at least he will know exactly how I feel. And if he still continues the relationship and I find out about it while playing detective, which I very much plan to do, then the divorce will be definite. So, my husband got home last night and really wanted to talk to me. He sorts of arranged a quiet romantic evening for us, which took me by somewhat of surprise. He then began to tell me about this woman, where she lived, how they met, etc. I was floored and full of emotions because these were some of the exact questions I've been dying to ask him. I was then able to ask the remaining questions and actually feel they were truthful and honest. It seemed though that he was a bit uncomfortable, as he should have been, discussing this with me since he knows he was wrong. From what he told me, besides the pics she sent and the back and forth texts, phone calls were only to talk about his problems at work. But since she has interest in more than that, I guess he found himself in a compromising situation by allowing her to send inappropriate pics to him. And he even asked her for them. He was open and remorseful about what he did, but swears that was it, no physical or emotional anything. I actually feel much better, but I guess as a woman, I kind of want to bring it back up just to say, are you sure that was it? And you didn't sleep with her at all, but I guess he answered already and I need to accept his answer. Believe him if I choose and try to move on. What do you all think? Also, I am still going to play detective just to help restore the trust lost and be sure he is being completely honest with me. But hopefully not too long so we can truly begin to rebuild our marriage. I guess I am now just wondering if I should still maybe get one last probe of a question in just to have that extra confidence that I heard him correctly. You know, sometimes you have conversations where you are nervous, emotional and kind of feel like you didn't hear everything good, but at the same time, you know what you heard. Well, I went through that last night, but I really don't want to rehash this, especially after he was so calm and open to come talk to me about it. Another huge update. First off, all of you are exactly right, and I am by no means not taking all advice. I know most of you, if not all, have been down this road, or just know so much about it. I, on the other hand, never dealt with infidelity before, and especially not in my marriage, which has been my only marriage. With that being said, I really wanted to believe him, but I don't, and for good reason. So, I listened to the recording from last night, and I just can't believe him. He lied to my face and did it with ease. I absolutely can't trust him, and I am finding out it's not just the one woman. So, let's begin. I hear a whole conversation with this woman, the original one saved in his phone as S from as soon as he got off work last night. Didn't call me, but her, and oh boy did I get an earful. Not only did they talk about sex, but he is trying to arrange a visit with her either this Wednesday on his off day, or this Friday. They talked heavily about having sex, oral sex, etc. I am hurt, but more so very disappointed in him. He even called her baby, but also by her name, Cheryl. As though this wasn't enough, I kept the recording going until I could secretly get it out to listen after he went to sleep this morning from taking kids to school and bringing me breakfast. Unbelievably, he called some other woman and was talking inappropriately with her about her sending more pics again, etc. I am in total shock right now. I plan to keep recording and not reveal my sources. But I am super pissed, and tonight when he comes home, and I am going to demand answers and try to resolve this. He will definitely have to be open and honest and let me know everything, every woman, and how long this has been going on, because if not, I am telling him tonight I will not retract the divorce papers and he will lose me for good, and that is no lie. I was and still am willing to forgive him, but I refuse to be lied to and cheated on. All those conversations sounded like he was straight single. So if that's how he wants to live, he will be, because I will not be disrespected and lied to like this. I didn't sign up for this, and I know people are dishonest, but I just never would have expected this from him. And to continue to call women after seeing how hurt I was just knowing about the one, unbelievable. So, hurt. I filed, so I will confront tonight. I really want to see how it goes, so I will follow your advice and update tomorrow. This will determine how I will proceed once he knows I know everything, but I will definitely not reveal my sources in no way. He can beg, but I am no fool, would never reveal. He better be prepared to plead his case and fight for this marriage. Otherwise, I know divorce would be our only option. I had the confrontation the other night. As soon as my husband got home from work, I didn't just jump into the conversation. I actually asked how was work. Allowed him to talk about work, etc. Then at some point, he asked how my day was and if I wanted to talk about anything. This was my perfect opportunity to start the confrontation. I then just started off and asked if he wanted to stay married, and his reasons to if so. If other than for love. I then just told him I know everything. He asked at some point how, but I didn't reveal my sources. I actually told him that is not the issue. And I don't have to explain anything, but he did. I told him straight out that I would uphold the divorce if he lied, say the wrong thing, get angry, or don't be completely open and honest about everything. I made sure he saw the seriousness, and I stressed how I would be out his life for good if this is the lifestyle he wants. Because I didn't marry him to go through this. I also told him straight out that he was dead wrong, that is inappropriate behavior for a married man, and that under no circumstance, in love or not, will I ever tolerate that, or allow that in my marriage. I also explained how I will go forth with the divorce so he can be single and do as he pleases. Well, everyone, his reply was not what I expected, but I must say, I can truly appreciate it. And I have to admit, love him even more for it. He was an open book, and had very genuine emotions, and remorse. He told me everything that has happened, and since out of being married to this man for 15 years, I know was the truth. So, according to him, he never had sex with any of the two women, but one since it's an ex. In the past only. He explained that he was living a fantasy, so to speak, but never intending on acting on anything said. It started as friendships just to talk about work, etc. But never about his marital problems. He explained when and how the line was crossed with all the dirty talk back and forth, the pics, etc. He also explained that he was wrong as two left shoes for all of it, regardless of if it never led to physical or real emotions, just for pretend. I mean, I do understand this only because I have actually thought about chatting with males online just to have someone to talk to keep my mind off problems at home when times were hard in my marriage. However, I know for a fact I never had any intentions on ever acting on anything either, although I never did because it just felt so wrong still. So, he then explained how wrong he was to give them his time, which was taken away from me. Like when he calls them instead of me on his way to and from work. He basically said everything possible to convince me this was really just a fantasy affair, and that he knew he was wrong, and how he'd stop immediately and never do anything like that ever again. Now I know people lie, and they say any and everything to get out of being in trouble, or in this case, lose their wife. But I know my husband very well and have only seen him actually cry real tears only a few times in our marriage, and this man was in more tears than me. I know tears don't mean honesty, or not going to repeat actions, but together with his words, emotions, facial expressions, and overall whole demeanor showed me this was honest. I don't know the future, but I can only take him for his words, work on reconciliation, and see what comes about in our future. Time will tell it all. One last thing, he asked me what he could do to regain my full trust, and that he would start with changing his phone number, giving me the PW, etc. I was actually shocked he asked this and offered some of the things I was going to demand anyway. I am just glad I didn't have to lay down demands. Well, I did, but didn't have to say it first. By him asking, it made it easier to give out all demands I had, and changing his number and giving me all passwords was definitely a must amongst many other demands. I want to say thanks again to all of you for the advice. I really appreciate it. Please feel free to give me more advice on how to move on from here, as I am trying my best, and actually feel much better now. Oh, I am still keeping my VOR, at least for a while. My comment: do you think OP demonstrated true remorse, or you don't believe such things exist? What characteristic demonstrates true remorse? Comment down and sub and bell. We shall learn from the next one.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the ninth grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.